I think there's more to this study we can extrapolate more from, but obviously we both have a lot going on. But I think this could even go further to like as something to be a precursor to things. I might be speaking out of turn, but like the NFL draft,
Hmm.
even police, law enforcement, because like I said, I work with a lot of them now down here in Florida in one of the largest departments in the country, Broward Sheriff's Office. And I actually spoke with one of the sergeants, and he was talking about how they do the psych evals, and you know how they do it. It's usually
Hmm.
clinical. It's like, okay, they don't check off for schizophrenia, they don't check off for
Right.
bipolar one, they don't check off
Yeah.
for manic depression. So it's like that doesn't mean you're still adequate. It just means
Right.
that's like saying in a physical sense, right? Okay, you don't have cancer, you don't have a broken bone. But does that mean you're ready for the NFL draft or you're ready for
Right.
a marathon? No, it just means you're
Right.
at least able to. So he actually said, I've never thought of it from the personality side of it. And you actually wrote an article about this. So I guess this is a perfect segue. The role of personality assessment for police, because you talked about implicit bias tests. And I know that's been the big rage
Mhm.
since I'll say 2020, since the George Floyd and all those
Mhm.
protests. So, what is your take on how that can play a role on selecting police as well as performance?
Yeah, so we work with quite a few police departments actually here at Hogan, and I think your point is exactly the right one, which is that so much of the work in the police area but relies on an assessment called the MMPI, and the MMPI will it's useful for measuring clinical disorders. It's useful for identifying people who like you use an example, like, they have a broken leg, so okay, they can't play football. Um, Okay, that seems seems somewhat useful, but it's limited in use, right? It doesn't predict the kinds of things that we see when we see incidents with police officers, that make the news, which are happening. It seems like all the time these days. Um, those things are more predicted by those more subtle personality traits. Those are more predicted by, are you agreeable? Are you good at de-escalating situations? Which has less to do with your if you're schizophrenic, right? I mean, that's not that doesn't really tell us much about your ability to do that. Whereas with a real personality assessment, we can actually have a good sense of, to what degree are you good at de-escalating stressful situations? To what degree do you get excitable and sort of get very emotional when the situation runs hot versus stay calm, stay cool under pressure? And that's the kind of thing that we do work with when we work with police departments. Um, Election space is exactly that, is identifying those personality traits that and I think one of the realities for a lot of police work is, I mean, we the sort of police work that makes the news is all the exciting, fast paced, high speed chases, those kinds of things that are the stuff, shootouts, those kinds of things make the news. Um, but a lot of police work is actually fairly mundane and fairly tedious, a lot of policy, a lot of process that needs to be followed. And it turns out that if you don't have officers that are really good at following those kinds of things, that's when you run into these kinds of incidents. So personality is really critical for that kind of for that kind of role, but for also for just about any kind of job role.
Well, that's interesting because it's like it seems so obvious, but it's not really a big practice. And like I said, that's one of the biggest agencies in the country. And if they're not really up to snuff, you can only imagine. I work with even smaller agencies where there's like 5 people. So how can use that for everyone? We're not even doing it in the bigger agencies. So it seems obvious, like, why not aren't we doing this? Because there is an issue. Like my father actually was a law enforcement for about 32 years to be exact. And he can attest to what is everything you said. Like there's a lot of low level stuff that isn't the high speed chases, the shootouts that gets ignored. But that's what majority of the job is. So we need to make sure they can do that job.
Exactly.